Okay, here we go. And I'm streaming. It is a fine Sunday. It's one of my favorite days. Arguably, Saturday is nicer. Saturday, you've got more time before work on Monday again. So Saturday, you've got that feeling of freedom, like you got all the time in the world, you can do anything you want. But I think, Saturdays I often plan something else to do that with friends, or go to a party, or go hiking, or do something, and it doesn't quite feel like it's all my day. It's almost like I had to make it more complicated. Sunday is always my day, with exceptions. I say always. No, it's just sometimes my day. Mostly my day. So Sunday's a settle-in day. I'm going to be at home. I'm going to be working on my projects. And if I'm honest, a lot of times Saturday when I'm out doing things that are more ambitious, I'm looking forward to Sunday. Okay, so let me talk about the plans for the Godkiller, and I'm going to start by showing some things that we have. Kind of curious. I was expecting a few people would be popping in. Not seeing anybody in the chat room, which is not the end of the world. I'll keep going, but it seemed like a few people were going to drop in. All right. So maybe people will catch this on archive. That's cool. That's all fine. Yeah, let's show kind of what I was going to do, and then I decided, now this is too much. I bit off more than I can chew here. So this is an kind of an early level design where I was going to have all the levels in the game be seamlessly connected, and started out doing that. I started roughing it out. I was fairly inspired by this article, like a video that Playdead gave about creating seamless worlds in Unity, and there were a number of things that you would want to do in order for it to work well, where you asynchronously load in levels as you walk around, and they really spent a lot of time optimizing that and getting that to work right. And I was interested in doing something similar, and then I thought, I'll spend half a year just getting that right, that working well. And right now, today, I've got it working pretty well, just simply loading in the next level and going to it. Not seamlessly, but with a little animation that plays while your guy is like rising up, and the level is loading in the next level, and then that animation finishes, and bam, you're there. It's very similar to the Portal 2 animations, where you hop into an elevator, and it seems somewhat seamless, but you kind of know that it is not a seamless experience, that they cheated a little bit and they made a very generic animation to move from one level to the next. So I've got kind of like that Portal 2 seamless level ability, and out here you see like some of like the crazy stair stuff I wanted to do, and still will do, but it's not going to be like you rise to the top of these steps and look down on every single place that you've been. That was kind of a cool thing that I was hoping to do, but if I think about it, I just want to get practical. I want to zero in on what can I do in this small game that's going to be cool, that's going to be fun, that will make people remember this and want to play it. And this very expensive thing with having a large seamless world is not really integral to that, so that would not be a good way to spend my time. So let me go to my document that I'm going to create. I'm going to plan this puppy out right now. I'm just going to start with an empty text file, just as it says right here, empty text file. I'm going to call it project plan. I may move this to a spreadsheet or something a little more structured later, but for now just a simple text file. That will suffice. Now I'm thinking about the different categories of stuff that I want to go into this. And there's game elements. There's assets. I may rearrange these buckets quite a bit as I go. I just want to kind of get the gist of what needs to be done. Okay, assets. I think I'll just start with some broad categories. I know that I'm going to need modeling. I'll say models. I don't mean fashion modeling. I mean 3D modeling. I know I'm going to need sound effects, voiceovers, music. Okay. Thinking more about visual assets. I'm gonna let textures be included in this too. I'll need portrait art. In fact, let's just start being hierarchical. Textures, animations, we'll need to go into there. Portrait art, because just like in the Drod games, there'll be characters that have 2D faces that go along with them. And these will actually be animated, and I've got some technology that is good for creating 2D animated faces that I'm going to reuse. Okay, so game elements. Quite a lot of this is already done. Let me just list out the game elements. I suppose this is a mild spoiler for people. So we say walls and floors, spikes, doors, axles. Okay, what else? What else? We got ice. We've got brawlers, which if you saw the previous video from last Sunday, that was the main enemy that chased after the player. So what else do we have in the game? We've got eggs, which is like the spawn point or the checkpoint. Exits. Getting pretty close to what all I've implemented. Water knobs, which I'm still going to demo at some point. Water knobs are pretty interesting. Okay, and thinking about like what else I plan to put in that's not implemented yet. There's something called a heavy. Heavies, spikies. So these are enemies that have certain properties. I think I'll start organizing this around enemies as well. Basic walls and floors. Nice. Even now I'm like thinking, I'm not entirely happy with the buckets I'm creating. I'm thinking basic, what should go in basic and what shouldn't go in basic. Doesn't really matter for now. I'll reorganize it more as I go. Let's see, what else do I know is going in? Pretty certain I'm going to put beams in. Beams are kind of like lasers that shoot across an area. Then I want to have like a little bit of room to just say there's going to be a few more elements that aren't decided upon yet exactly what they're going to be. So I'll just say TBD enemy number 1, TBD enemy number 2. I don't think I'm going to make like a whole bunch more enemies beyond this. And there's something called God Hands. Okay. So it feels like that's pretty close to the set of elements I would create that would just make up a game. There is something pushable blocks, which I don't want to spoil too much, but I will just say I have no plans to heavily feature pushable blocks in this game. It's almost more like a joke that they're there. Okay. Then thinking about a few game elements that are more story based. I'll call them story support. These might be general features that apply to multiple game elements above. But they still need to be implemented. It's not like a job of creating assets around them. It's a job of creating general game engine capabilities. So I'll say, you know what? Maybe it's better to think of it as a general game engine, which can include story support and other things as well. So let's say the audio system. Let's be more specific. Speech system, dialogue system. So there'll be something where if the character talks, you might see some text on the screen. You hear something play. It's like the same concept as in Drod, where we have a character speaking in a scripted way. Level restart. So I'll keep the game engine stuff specifically for in-game activities. And then I'll start like another category for meta screens, which would be meta functionality. So load level, screen, title screen, exit screen, settings screen. Hey Zindaris, glad to see you here. Grading over? What's grading? Are you grading something? Differential equations? Okay. Cool. Um, well, glad you're grading. I hope it wasn't a degrading task for you. Okay, so meta functionality, settings screen. Anyways, so let's go back to general game engine, level restart, other things I need. So we need some I need the level load. I need some work done on the level loading. Need to serialization. I'll detail that out later. Okay. Assets, music, done. So this whole exercise, it's a bit of a sanity check, because my goal is to more or less be able to finish all the stuff on my own with a little bit of help. I'll talk about that in about a year. Or it's like one of those things where I should aim to be done in about a year and not be surprised if it goes long. Because there's this thing where you get that last little bit of a game, you think you're finished, and there's just, it always seems like just a little bit further you've got, and that will drag on for some months. Call it the 75% mark. Right now I'm at about the 25% mark. I put in some, let's see, how much time I put in at this point? I think I put in maybe 100 hours or so, maybe 200 hours. I had a vacation a little while back in Colombia where I was hanging out in Bogota and in an Airbnb, and kind of ridiculously, most of my time in Colombia was joyfully spent writing code for this game, which for me is actually a pretty cool vacation because I had that nice setting and no expectation that I need to do anything with my day job. I can kind of concentrate on my projects and then go out and see the world when I want to come up for air. So anyways, yeah, I'd say I'm about at the 25% mark. I have a playable game. I don't have like all the levels built out. Oh, that's another thing I need to add as a general category. Level creation. Levels, I'll just say levels. Creating, play testing. So I'm going to do this mostly all by myself. I'm not going to do like the Drod model of relying on volunteer help for things. At least I'm heavily biased against that right now. I just sort of want to keep it small and keep it mostly me. Now there are going to be exceptions to that. I think I may spend a 5-digit number in US dollars on contracting when I identify some things that would really benefit from it. And I want to keep those tight. Like, I want to have this feeling like if I had to, I could do the whole thing myself, but in a few areas, I'll be able to contract out for someone who's really much, much better and faster at something and get them to produce a tightly defined asset or like 3D models. That would be a good thing to consider kind of outsourcing to a contractor. Music is always a nice one. Music is great because it's cleanly separated as a dependency. So you can ask somebody to create a piece of music, and you say, I would like a 3-minute song that's kind of moody and fits a certain theme, and they write it, and you drop it in, and you just got some engine code that says play this song. There's no chance that like they can make something different in their music that makes your code have to change. You just have to hook it in and it's done. Occasionally that's not true with music. Like if you really try to tightly orchestrate music such that it plays like cues that happen at certain times, then it really can be interconnected. But I try to avoid situations like that if I really don't aim to do something special with that level of integration. Yeah, so as far as being cohesive, like Draw's a pretty good example of how we spec'd it out. There's a contemplative theme, and there's an aggressive theme. And we said for each style, we will have a piece of music that's at least 2 minutes long. I think we might have even said 3 minutes. That will be kind of a little bit mellow in nature, contemplative, and another one's more aggressive or action-oriented. We've got some kind of analysis of the room to determine if that room is falls into one category or the other. I think it's as simple as monster count. I don't know if Mike ever made it more refined than that. And we play one or the other. And then there was this idea that we don't want to hear like the same song being played all the time, so we'd have one variation. So each room style in Draw has got aggressive 1, aggressive 2, contemplative 1, contemplative 2, and it's got like an exit theme, and I think that might be it. I think that might be it for Draw. Yeah, okay, Zindaris, it sounds like there was some refinement to it, which is cool. Right. So, but you think about that level of integration, and it was pretty easy. So we talked to John Sonnenberg, who wrote like all the music in The City Beneath, and well, probably a few exceptions, and then The Second Sky, he scored that as well. And he would send us at the beginning of the project a bunch of little musical ideas that weren't like necessarily fully fleshed out. Like he might do a 30-second song, and then we would kind of map that to the styles, aggressive or contemplative, and sort of order up a fuller version of like one of those song ideas. And also he had like a number of songs that were already written off of his albums with lyrics, and he just ended up making instrumental versions of those, or using the sequencing he'd done without the lyrics. So again, like once you have those assets in, then it's not going to change the code. You don't have to go back and rewrite something. So those are really excellent candidates music for having someone besides me do it. Whereas taking like say I was going to think about contracting out God Hands. Well, we'll get into God Hands design, but like it's really kind of tightly coupled with my ideas about story sequences in the game should work, and my ideas about game mechanics, and how if you're looking at the screen it should be very clear like what space the enemy occupies and things like that. So I would have to spend probably a solid week speccing out clearly like what that element should be, hand it off to a programmer. The programmer writes it up. They'll get a few things wrong. I have to come back and check and say, no, we need to change this a little bit. If I'm really trying to contract out cleanly so that I get like a flat rate, so it's very clear that I'll pay X dollars and get this thing back, then again that spec has got to be really written out in detail, which is a large effort. And verifying it's tricky too. And plus the efficiency involved for a second person to come in, understand those requirements, make sure they get them right. It's going to increase the cost of them doing the work. So it's like some tasks I just kind of want to do myself since I don't have like a large budget. So I may spend $10,000 on contracting work. I may decided I've got like a larger budget to work on it, or like I feel like I can recoup it. Then I might spend say $30,000 on it if I feel like I can recoup it, or if I feel like it's just such a labor of love that it really justifies spending that amount, then take a risk and spend all that cash, maybe get a little loan off of a credit card or something and get that done that way. But that's kind of the scale of this thing, and that's tiny. That is so tiny by indie standards. Something like a game that I was very tangentially involved with. Why am I like that? Thimbleweed Park. With Ron Gilbert. You see him making out a plan just like this, and his is assuming that there's going to be a team of paid people going along with him for as he goes. And I'm not talking out of school in any of this. He's published it all. But he had like a handful of team members that were all working on it for a year or two, and that's hundreds of thousands of dollars easily. And I don't even want to like accidentally say more about it than I should. I don't think he ever shared any private information related to that with me, but I just don't want any confusion about it. But I would be surprised if he spent like more than $1 million on it. But still, that's considered small potatoes in the land of games. So this is ultra indie. This is ultra tiny. So I gotta be very realistic about this and think about like what can I actually get done. So at the 25% mark, spending a few hundred hours on it, I think it's pretty realistic to keep going and get the rest of this done. So let me break this out further. Levels. So how many levels am I going to make on this thing? Think of the level plan. Just this is a little scratch area up here. So we're going to need some introduction levels. I think I've already gone through this exercise once. But I don't really want like a separate tutorial that you go through. I want you to just start playing and have things introduced to you as you go. So I feel like, you know, there should be basics of movement, walking and flinging. And it was kind of nice when, you know, Delpolo and Lacelite and I think, yeah, Zendaris, you were on there for a bit. I think you had streaming problems or something, but I felt like everybody kind of got the basics pretty well. But I have to think like also we're going to have a bunch of non-Drod players. Yeah. So I have like this interesting character, God. God is this character, and for anyone listening, I don't mean the God that is your God that you worship. It's the God of this world. It's an entirely separate God that nobody worships except people inside of this world. And God is kind of like the yeah, that's an elegant way to say it. He's a fantasy deity. Um, God is actually a nice person to start you off with the tutorial. Your main character, who I've decided the name of her, it's a she. The name is M, E-M-M, is going to be welcomed by God into the world on her first day of existence, and God will just walk you through the basics of movement, as though He's your parent, and He wants you to do well in the world. So, I think that's the start of the introduction. So, I don't want God to be talking at you all the time. At some point, He's going to be off in His own world, and you'll actually be up against Him. He'll be an enemy. But to start, M and God are on good terms, and God wants M to do well in His world. So He'll be guiding her along. Other things. Stairs and heights. So dropping off of things. Noticing you can traverse 1 square height. Okay. And then here's the part where a lot of people get lost in Drod, or at least they're momentarily confused, and they try to plow through it without really understanding that other creatures. And the part that's confusing is that they wait for you to move. And a lot of people just keep moving, and they kind of think that like it's working like a regular game. They don't get the stepping mechanic. But I want the player to be walked through the stepping mechanic. I want them to understand it. I want like somebody who's just kind of like drunk on a couch, not paying any attention, just kind of trying to plow through with a short attention span, to kind of be forced to figure it out a little bit, and to not be able to get past this part without understanding it. And did we ever do that in Drod? Was there ever any level that kind of made you have to get it? Or was it more like you sort of plowed through for this sort of short attention span person, that you sort of plowed through, and then you got to some other level where it got more complicated, and then you didn't understand it, and then you just said, screw it, this game doesn't make any sense. There's no way anybody could finish without, but I just wonder, I should know this by now. I should know this because I sat through all these play sessions. But I think I'll be able to do it if I have the God character talking through it, making little jokes about it, saying, like, okay, well, these other creatures, they move when you do, but you don't actually control them. They're not an extension of you. Part of your trouble being a new creature in this world is figuring out what's you and what isn't you, stuff like that. Zendaris, I'm very curious. I'm reading your chat with great interest. You have extremely vague memory of your first introduction to Drod. Okay, there was the Flash version. You went and tried it. You lost interest. And then, you didn't understand that it was a puzzle game exactly. You start and you tried it over again. And then you got it the second time. And this is my thing. I don't want to lose people on the first time. I've been through this once before. I don't want to lose people the first time. I want, if that person, see, I'm lucky, Zendaris, that you came back and you try it a second time. Because that first time, you were exactly the right kind of player to be involved with that game, but we missed it. You could say the Flash version it's a different experience, but the Flash version is really just doing the same thing we did with KDD, with that first level of KDD that I played 10 million times, and I've actually watched people go through it. Right. So I think I'm going to spend a large amount of time on the stepping mechanic and the AI behind it. AI for voiceovers. So if you think about how tutorial activated voiceovers usually work in games, there's usually not much branching to it. There's usually not much. They say, "You want to go push that box next, Chief," and then the character goes over and pushes the box, and they detect that the condition has been met. They detect that you push the box, and they say, "All right, now we're ready to move on to getting ammo." Stuff like that. And then they also sometimes check when you like sort of lost focus and you like wander off someplace else, and they go, "Well, Chief, don't forget to push the box," right? So, but I want to be better than that. I want to, like, if I can, kind of get a little more granular, and if the player is sort of not getting it, guide them more specifically. If I see them trying stuff, I want to be able to notice that they've tried stuff and have God say, "Yeah, you understand how to move, but do you get the part that, So I'm just thinking, like, this is the opportunity where I can catch players the first time instead of the second time, which I may never get. Yeah. I think something about the presentation may feel like I should be playing something that works like Zelda or something. Right. So that's another thing I'm always battling is when people play a game, they're trying to kind of fit it into what they played before and say, it's this type of game, so I should be doing this. And I think we may be off in new territory for a lot of people that come along. Sort through some menus, tell different. Yeah, the stepping game mechanic. That's basically the new thing that people a lot of times don't get. Adaptive tutorial systems. That's what I want. Yeah. So that's it. It's basically, I don't want to hit that first level where it's you just notice that the player hasn't accomplished the goal you gave them. I want to notice more specifically their progress in trying to figure out the mechanic and to guide in great detail, or at least in more detail than what we're used to in tutorials, how they get to that point of understanding. I don't want to do that for every single element. It's just this stepping mechanic, which a lot of people just don't get. Okay, so then let's keep going. So introduction levels. At this point, I think the tutorial style trails off. The player is going to get to, and I will not do story spoilers here beyond that little bit that I've given, but point of conflict. I have something really silly and fun planned here, but I don't want to give it away too soon. Point of conflict. God versus M. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Zendars without too many false positive negatives. You can get really, you can get a little cocky with that stuff and be wrong. Yeah, yeah. So I expect we'll need a lot of play testing around this stepping mechanic. I'm going to use your term, adaptive tutorial. I won't use AI because it's not really proper AI. Adaptive tutorial, extra play testing. Okay, point of conflict. Okay, then we're past like the kind of the basic things that a game has to do to send a player off, and we're just into the proper game now. So there'll be an introduction of elements. Let's call this. I think this is a good enough scratch. I can just move it over here. Okay, so then things I want to introduce, roughly in the order I want to introduce. Spikes. Spikes are pretty key to being able to choose when you die, so that should be early. Ice, also pretty key. I think at this point, ice in combat. Concept. You don't need to kill the creatures. It's not your goal. So there might be some room where you could screw around all day trying to kill the creatures, but you really should just move on. One of those forced learning concept rooms. Okay. What else? So eggs, at this point the player should have died a number of times, but I want them to get the mechanics. Let's see, concept, eggs, using touch to choose where you are reborn, other refinements. Okay. So then it feels like about time to introduce the doors. It's pretty basic, needed to set up different kinds of puzzles. Parody, as Del Polo invented. Here, actually, let's even call it out separate. Concept. Pushing parody. You have to build like a little statue of Del Polo in the game as the father of that term. Let's see, doors. Okay. Concept. Blocked doors. Maybe I'm getting a little bit crazy with these concepts. Maybe they're actually not really about when to introduce them, but they're just kind of like level design ideas, but I don't mind capturing them. Pushing. No, they're not called monsters, they're creatures. All God's creatures. Okay, pushing creatures into pits or out of the way. Okay, block doors. Okay. Okay, now it feels like it's way past time to add another type of enemy. So maybe heavies. Heavies are just unpushable brawlers. So suddenly there's like these heavies gumming up the works. I need to play with them a little bit more. Actually, I need to implement them and play with them, but I'm pretty sure they're going to be there. Okay. So then, let's see. Okay, pushable blocks. Pushable blocks are not going to feature heavily in the game because Sokoban blocks. There's a joke, a story joke at the point of conflict scene related to pushable blocks. However, I am going to play with them, and if I feel like the 3D aspect of having pushable blocks is worth bringing them in, then I might use them for puzzles. But I'm just tired of I shouldn't say I'm tired. I just feel like it's really been done, the whole thing where you've got like a kind of a tricky little space to push the blocks around in, and you have to kind of think through all the node searching of if you push this one here, then you've got room to make a little way for another one to get through. Just feels like it's well explored space. Absolutely, Zendaris. And that's going to be true for every single damn thing in this. So I'm going to show you water knobs either in this session or another one. And there's like some kind of laborious thinking about like what is the minimum time that I want to spend showing an animation for this thing happening. And every single animation that I put into this, my thought is, what is the minimum amount of time that I want to spend animating this? So everything's going to be snappy, very Drod-like. And then there's also a thought about a budget for animation. So when you are in Drod and you push your key to go into another square, the fastest amount of time that you can just repeat, it's like 20 milliseconds or something like that. That's a budget. That's a budget for an animation. The idea being, by the time that your finger lifted up and was able to press down again, that amount of time is how much time I have to show an animation. So that philosophy is kind of built into how all these animations will get made. Okay, so yeah, with the pushable blocks, I will do some exploration. It will actually make a fun session to see like how much puzzle potential we get in putting them in the 3D world. I'm also kind of wary of doing too much here because Jonathan Blow has been working on a game which seems to be exploring that concept. I kind of don't want to like do the same shit that this other huge puzzle game is going to do and be labeled like someone who's copying that effort. I'd rather kind of create have a respectable distance from it if that game is going to do something which would be mostly the same as what I'm doing. But we'll take a look at it. I just know for definitely sure I don't want like normal 2D pushable block puzzles in this. Okay, moving on. So I know water knobs, I want to be late in the game. I know we want a little bit of... The God Hands are sort of like this really annoying enemy you have to deal with. So let's call this God Hands intro, and it should be you mostly failing. How long it takes to make a single push move. Yeah, I kind of hate those like beautiful animations that are just slowing you down. It's not like puzzle platformer where you mess with time was a brand new idea when he made Braid. Yeah, I heard there was like at least one other game that did that. I think his execution was probably pretty unique. I don't know. I didn't see the other game. It's usually true about every game that you can't properly call it unique because there's something else that came before it. And, you know, we explored even Drod. Like, is Drod unique? No, there was like robots and there was Daleks and there was Chase and stuff like that. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, maybe that whole 3D block thing is not such a big deal if I'm in the same space as another puzzle game that might be coming out around the same time. Particularly like if, you know, we're independently exploring how to make that and there hasn't been a lot of 3D block stuff. But okay, so God Hands, this is sort of like story-wise, you should do poorly against the God Hands. Okay, heavies. Okay, then you'll have God Fight. And I won't say much about that. Okay, what else? Let's see. Beams. Spikies. TBD enemy number 1. TBD enemy number 2. I feel like enemies. I feel like if you introduce like a new element and it's an enemy, that should be spread out like between. I don't have like the right term for this, but there's like what's a good term for this? You know how there's this applies to Drod too. There's stuff that is basically it's enemy based or creature based, monster based, a movable thing that reacts to you. Okay, what would you call the other type of element? Which is, you know, in Drod it would be an orb, it would be a pit, a trapdoor. What's a good general term for that type of element? It's sort of like object, I guess. Mechanism, yeah. I think I might call it maybe foundational. I don't know. It's like sort of part of the infrastructure. It's something you interact with. It's static. Anyways, for the moment, let's say that this other type, maybe I'll call it foundational for the moment. This other type, I want it to be interleaved in introduction with the enemies. So there's no reason to introduce 2 enemies in a row. I would prefer to have like a foundational thing interleaved. So heavies, then we do beams. Feels like we need something else foundational. Oh, axles. Why did I forget axles? In fact, I feel like axles needs to come before beams. Okay. And spikies are they're pretty powerful. They're like they're little guys made out of spikes. You touch them, they die, and they should kind of like be extra frustrating. Not quite like the Slayer level, but up there. Okay, TBD enemy number 2, beams. Okay, water enemy. No, you touch them, you die. I'm thinking of making them kill other things too. So I think like, actually, I actually think it would be funny to have them talk a little bit and just basically be extremely friendly, and just kind of out of affection, wanting to close the distance between them and M, the player. But as they go along, it's just sort of a path of destruction. They end up killing other creatures as they walk along. Yeah, see, there's whatever idea I come up with, there's always some other game that's done it. It's pretty much impossible not to. And also, like, I suppose the turrets in Portal, The turrets in Portal are really sweet as they call out to you, and just kind of horrific to deal with. Oh, I like that little twist too. So like the cats are actually not going to mess with you if you don't mess with them. Yeah. Yeah, actually, I really like that twist. I left it out, but I was thinking of having like the enemies hold a grudge against you if you killed them, and then be sort of meaner than they were before. So that if you were a bit pacifist in nature in your gameplay, you might have an easier time dealing with them. But then I thought, I really like not having to think too hard as a player about how the reacting game elements are going to react, or the creatures are going to react. So if I have to have this kind of bimodal behavior, then it'll be harder as a player to just sort of instinctively feel like this creature's going to do this thing. All right. So beams, TBD enemy number 2. Water knobs, another foundational type of element. It feels like I need TBD foundational number 1. It just feels like I'm light there. Yep. To have some kind of graphical indication. Yeah, I thought about that a little bit. I think you are right. I think you're exactly right about, like, if I was going to have that, you'd want some kind of graphical indication. You'd also want to be probably consistent across. Like if we, I could argue also that same concept would be well applied to drawed graphics for brained creatures. Except that all the creatures are brained at one time, so maybe it's not as useful there to distinguish between one or the other. But to just kind of look at the creatures and see, oh, okay, this creature is going to act a certain way, and not think about it too long. So if I go and look, geez, way the hell up here. Get down to the level, get down to the level. Oh man, I got a long ways to scroll. I don't know how. It set me way up here. Okay. I was maybe like 5 kilometers up there. Okay. So let me see if I can get just kind of like the representative height. Oh, okay. So that's about where it is during gameplay. And there's one issue with 3D graphics for showing details. You don't get to use the tight control that you would have with 2D art to show things consistently in the same way. I think it is possible to come up with a convention that would pretty clearly show. And it would probably be generalizable, but it would be hard, and it would probably not be as effective at quickly showing the state of that enemy, and like just picture the screen kind of filled up with all sorts of other enemies. Yeah. So in Drob, whether a thing will move is brained or not is function of, is there a brain? Yeah. There's certain things about its pathing that you can work out if you think enough. Yeah, my example drawed it's not quite as it's not apples to apples with this, right? So as you say, it's sort of clear in your head. You've got like one flag in your head. Are monsters brained or not? And you can kind of just look at the screen. Is there any pink thing on it that looks like a brain? Okay, they're all brained, or they're all not brained. Whereas here we could have like, you know, maybe 30 enemies on the screen at one time, and a portion of them could be in aggressive mode, grudge mode, and the other portion would not be. And then you would definitely need that visual indicator to make sense of it. And my question is to myself, like, is it like a little too much information? But it could be pretty fun. It could be pretty fun to deal with that mode. And I was thinking like the aggressive mode might be as simple as the monster can get up on the bad parity or the off push parity. Like we might say if a monster is aggressive, that monster, I gotta stop saying monster because I really want to call them creatures, but that creature can get onto the off push parity easily. Like maybe right when they're born, you can play with a little bit. Maybe it's too much. They might to let them always be able to maybe wait a turn to get them onto the off push. That might be too hard. But I think the parity is probably the general thing that you could add into all the creatures' behavior and have it be pretty instinctively felt by the player without having to think too hard about what that creature's going to do when they get to you. So, okay. I don't know, talking through it, I'm kind of coming back to liking that grudge mode. So, I don't know, I'm just going to put grudge mode. Little question by it. I don't know if I'm going to do it or not. Alright, hold on. I'm gonna run off and use the restroom briefly. Call this an intermission. I really won't be gone long. Be back in just, I think, 2 minutes. catching up with chat here. Let's see. Let's see, information. It's totally obvious in certain contexts, especially if you aren't deeply familiar with what is. Okay, that's actually what you said. Find a way to make a run where you have to set the enemy's aggression to a very specific set of levels. Yeah, so this is one problem I don't have to worry about. I don't have to worry about making a game element that would lead to exploitive level design or tedious level design. Because at least in this initial release, no level editor. It's just not because it wouldn't be nice to have one, but I've got enough stuff to do, and that would add a lot. So I'm in control of the level design for this first release, and frankly, like, even if I did add a level editor, I would not worry about people abusing it, because it's just such a strange thing to worry about. I'm really kind of wondering why I ever did. There were like moments where I thought, I don't want to add this because I think a whole bunch of people are gonna like make some terrible levels with it. But so what? Then people won't play them or whatever, you know. So yeah, I've got control over the level design for my releases, and that's all I need. Yeah, and I won't call them out, but there's bad holds up there, and where people didn't spend very much time on it, and they're not that fun to play, or the people weren't that skilled in creating it, whatever. But the overall output of people, it's not diminished, because like there's some stuff in it that's maybe not as good. Yeah, so that's my original line of thinking, Delpolo. It's kind of like thinking about what direction will the community go. And it's not really something you have to worry about. Even like if I add a level editor to this later, which is quite possible. If I get this out the door, and it feels like I can keep going, then adding a level editor would work. Be kind of like the same thing that Portal did. You have handcrafted scenes that would be created like in an environment like this, and that wouldn't be inside the level editor, because it's really difficult to like say like in my big cinematic world, I want to add like a giant statue of Delpolo here to reward him for coming up with term parity. Well, that's not something I would just throw in the editor. Yeah, we have to honor your achievements, Delpolo. Don't worry, we will in some way. It might not be a statue, but because eventually there's going to be something that is so kind of off editor that it really just needs like a proper 3D modeling tool. And it's also kind of like a one-off piece of art that shouldn't just be repeated throughout different levels. So the level editor would be something more constrained, where you can do the basics, like you can set floor heights and create the 3D space and add in the game elements. So that's what a level editor would end up being. And that's how they did it like in Portal 2. Like if you go and do the level editor, you can't make like the same dramatic levels that were in Portal 2. You know, like that starting sequence where the player's inside of something that looks like a little motel room, because that is, for the reasons I discussed, better accomplished within like a proper 3D editor. So anyways, Let me finish this level list. I think I'm pretty close. So I want spikies. I want water knobs to be last. Foundational element number 1. TBD. Or TBD foundational element. And del Polo, a corner of terms. If you have a better term than foundational, I'm not like really happy with it. Let's see. Okay, so how we got this part I like. Got hands intro, spikes, ice and combat, and of course I should be honest with myself when we actually get to making some levels. The order should change around a bit. But I just want to kind of feel like I've got a good mix. I keep going back to Portal, but I felt like that small number of elements they put in both Portal 1 and in Portal 2 was kind of a nice way to do it, where you're not trying to throw everything into the game, but you kind of figure out like a set of elements that definitely work well together, definitely make good puzzles together, and you create based on that. It's a general guideline for order of introduction. I imagine a bunch of these would expand out to maybe 10, 20 levels. I imagine like we'd have combination levels, where it's not focused on just one element, but we sort of bring in a bunch of other concepts together and put them together. So I think it may not be as clear that they're combination levels as it has been in like the Drod level design. It'll just kind of happen naturally. Like we'll start out and say, okay, we'll have a level with doors in it, that first level. Just doors, maybe just a simple doors puzzle, no creatures in it. And then after that, you do doors and some creatures you fight at the same time, that type of thing. So that's pretty good. There was something that I forgot about. Something kind of important I forgot about. Oh yeah, okay. So I need Steam integration. So that's the first target for this. Steam integrate and Steam. Just say Steam. Okay. So I need account setup. I need Steam SDK integration, Steam release. That's my first target. I'm going to go to Steam first. And thankfully these days it's much simpler than it was when Mike Reimer was trying to get Drod up onto Steam for the first time. And they had like that whole green light thing. It's really much easier now. Basically anybody can get up onto Steam. If you've got $100 and you've got like some kind of bank account that you can hook up your account numbers to. I do want to talk to Mike about this because so like if you were looking for, I'm curious. Zendaris. The good and the bad. So it's easy to get on, hard to get discovered, basically. And that's the problem for any creator, any place on the internet right now. No shortage of places to start a thing with or publish yourself. Very hard to get anybody to pay attention to it. So yeah, easy to get onto Steam. That's for sure. Hard to get noticed. So it is possible to release a game without integrating with the Steam SDK at all. I want to talk to Mike to get his opinion about how valuable it was and how hard it was. So I know there's leaderboards, there's badges. I wonder to what extent these things are important to Steam players. Should I worry about them? Should I spend the extra week, 2 days, whatever, to work on this? If you folks have opinions about like the value of those extra Steam features, I would be interested in that. I feel like this is not a multiplayer game. It's not going to take advantage of things like the lobby feature. The features of Steam that seems like it could benefit from basically the leaderboards and what was the other one? Oh, badges. Badges seems like, that'd be all right to have. But I'm not like a huge Steam player. I'll bring up Steam, and I'll give like one example of a game where I actually did use the Steam features. All right, it's gonna do its thing for a little bit. Okay, let me flesh out the assets here. So models. I think I'll take out textures as a subcategory because those just sort of happen as I work on stuff. So I want to basically all of the creatures, we're going to need models. So let me just add in the creatures. God hands, brawlers, heavies, spikies, TBD enemy number 1, TBD enemy number 2. Okay. Then I need something kind of like a citizen. I'll just call it a citizen for now because that makes it clear to me. Basically, somebody who's not attacking you, but is just moving around. Movables. Citizen. Not technically an enemy. And they're basically there for story reasons in the same way they're used inside of Drawd. Then let's call this creatures. That's right. That's the word I want. Okay, creatures. Creatures will need models, animations, but really the animations are there. This is a really nice thing about Unity. You define the animations one time for a humanoid type, which is fairly well defined, like what parts it should have. Once you've done that, you can apply the same animation to the same creatures as long as they're humanoid in shape. And even if they're kind of weird, even if they've just got like some of the parts, they still sort of work. So thinking about the animations I need walk, I need fall, I need pushed, I need pushing, puncture, dying on spikes, basically. Drown, swim. A lot of these I'll just be grabbing from pre-made animations from the asset store and modifying them to fit the stepping mechanic. So that, thankfully, is not a giant piece of work. At least I don't think it will be. Okay, drown, swim. I'll say ascend, which is when you touch the exit. Walk upstairs, walk downstairs. And then when you step up onto something that doesn't have stairs, but it's like one height high, you can kind of get onto it. Step onto one high, step down from one high. Okay, fall, push, pushing, puncture, drown, swim. Oh, disintegrate. So when you're up against a wall and somebody pushes you, or you do that to somebody else, and all your pieces just kind of fall apart. Okay. Creatures, models, and model-specific animations, which I don't believe there'll be that many. Okay. Portrait art. This, by the way, on my YouTube channel, there's a number of videos that are showing like this technology that I've already got, which is we can have 2D faces. They can have proper lip animation, where the lip movements correspond to visemes that are generated from the actual words you're speaking. So like basically like Flintstone quality lip animation. And I can set expressions very easily. So like that part is really well defined. I definitely want to reuse it. Kind of like having I've got some mocks of this somewhere, but basically you got this tiny little guy that you're controlling, and briefly when there's something that character says, a little head bubble in 2D appears and it shows the character talking. You hear the voiceover audio, and it's looks like a nice piece of like TV quality cartoon animation. And I have to use that because it's like one of my unique powers. I spent a lot of time developing code to do this quickly. I have this network of voiceover actors I can reach out and talk to. It's sort of like, this is like a thing that I can do pretty well, pretty easily and cheaply. So if I didn't use it, I'd be kind of stupid. But also it definitely supports the story, and it will add to it quite well. Portrait art. So we need portrait art, not for every single thing. Suppose it was every single thing. Would that be that bad? So we definitely need M. There's a character named Glyph. There's God. Then I do want to have some of these generic characters talking. So let's say we'll call it Citizen 1, Citizen number 2. That's probably enough for the limited story that I have in this. I wanted the Spikies to talk, so let's have one for a Spiky. Let's say there's one brawler and there's one heavy, and if it feels like it's too much, I can I can roll back on it. Or we'll say that maybe not every single enemy gets one, but I can do some. Well, spikies I definitely want to talk. Let's say talking creature number 1, talking creature number 2. That feels like a reasonable amount of portrait art. I don't need to do one for every single thing. And I know roughly how long these take to make, because I made a bunch of them already. So this feels pretty reasonable. Okay, sound effects. Steps with environmental variation. So, and actually this is just M steps. I don't want every creature to be making stepping noises. It's just be very chaotic. Although I don't know, I might play with that. Let's see. But if they are, then it's just generic steps. So it's not like there's a different type of step for every enemy. So let's say other creature steps. Environmental variation would be differences in echo if you're in a tight space or a large space. So I think maybe 3 to 4 environmental variations. And a nice thing about Unity is I don't have to make an engine for 3D sound. I just say there's this sound that's emitting from a certain location. I'm going to get the stereo stuff automatically. I'm going to get this thing's off over here. It's above you. They even got things where it like dampens depending on if there's like some walls in front of you. So I get to play with that. Voiceovers. That will need that. I almost am better off putting that under a story section, but yeah, I think I will. I'll put that under a story section. We'll say story outline, which is nearly done. We'll say dialogue, script dialogue. Yeah. Screenplay. I hate calling things scripts inside of a game because there's so many things that have a script to them, so it becomes very ambiguous. Okay. So for voiceovers, you do a table read with your actors to come up with notes on the best performances and to also suggest revisions to make. So you'll see like a line doesn't seem to be working very well. It's not that funny, or it's not that dramatic, or when the actor tries to say it, it sounds very contrived. That particular actor might stumble over the line a little bit and they'd feel better saying something else. That's what the table read and that's what the screenplay revisions are for. On a show like The Simpsons, they go back and change the lines a million times throughout various stages, even after recording, even after animating. They'll go back all the way to the screenplay and re-record audio, redo animation. Not me. I know from doing this a number of times. I can write the screenplay, I can do a table read. One set of variations here. Okay. So then we have recording sessions. And I think I should aim for it to be one recording session. Someone just maybe texted me. Let me double check that. Oh. It's Elizabeth, and she's sending me a couch that she thinks we should get. But never mind that. We'll talk about couches later. Um, all right, so thinking about the actors and what works well, I think I'll probably be able to do this with 3 to 4 actors for the main parts in one session with everyone. So this is a huge part of getting good voiceover dialogue. I wish we could have done it more with Drod. But if you have the actors in the same room at the same time reacting to each other when they record, it's going to sound better. It's going to sound a lot better. So that'll be my goal, to get everybody in one session. Okay. So then there'll be other actors that I will not try to get into this one main session. So I'll say non-main recordings. Those can be one-offs in remote studios. That's all fine. Okay. Then there'll be pickups. So pickups are when you take all those recordings and you get down to sit down and listen to them all, and you notice mistakes. You notice like an actor gave you 3 versions of one line, but in all of them they mispronounced a word. You try to pick those all up in the initial. You try to catch all those in the initial session, but invariably there's something that you need a pickup. So I'm scheduling a little bit of time for that. Okay. So then once you have all the final audio, Zendaris, it seems obvious, honestly. Like, would I sound more natural responding to somebody imaginary or somebody right in front of me? Yeah, you bet. But the thing with VO is that it's difficult. It's difficult to get everybody in one studio recording together. So most people don't do it. But I found much better results that way. Okay, so pickups. We have final audio. Edit the audio. Or I could say audio editing. Okay, audio editing and chopping. So this basically takes all those raw recordings and we remove like all the little problems with it, and we chop them up into game ready assets that we can drop in. Which also means that I want the screenplay to include tags or asset IDs. Okay. And those will be referenced. So when I chop these up, the waves will have asset IDs that tie back to specific events within the game. Okay. And this is a good candidate for a contractor to help me with. I've got someone in mind for that. Okay. So the story's pretty good here. Okay, music. Okay, there will be some songs that I specifically write with vocals. And I'm actually trying to organize something where we record some vocals with people from the Drod or this little community, which would be an exception to the rule, because most of this stuff I like the professional studio, and I like to have it sound like a certain quality level, and it's hard to do that when you say everybody go record something on your computer. But I have one little experiment that I want to try, where we record a song together. We'll get into that later. So music, 2 songs, vocals, okay? And then in-game music, I'll say other in-game music. I think I want to go with highly environmental music, but or highly ambient music. Which, I mean, this is a little bit of a cheat, but if you use music that's very ambient, you do not have to spend as much money on it. So it doesn't bother a person very much to hear music that is very ambient a little bit repetitively, as opposed to something that's got a very recognizable melody and song. If you play that music again and again and again, you need to have it be very ambient. Whereas something like Drod, that music is not ambient. It's mostly pretty recognizable. You hear it, it's clear what that song is. Yeah, no, I know. So I'm gonna put a big TBD on this, because part of me recoils at that sort of cheap approach. So this will definitely be licensed. Yeah, but the key to not making it grading is having more of it. That's the issue. So if you commission, say like an hour of music, if you ask a top rate musician, go write me an hour of music. Just for reference, TCB has got over an hour of commissioned music in it. There's ways you can get deals, but if you were just saying, make me brand new music, make me an hour of brand new music, that's like half a year of somebody's life, maybe, of a talented first-rate musician. So expect to spend, $40,000, something like that, just on the music, and that is already cheap. I mean, I could, you're not going to go get like Jonathan Coulter for $40,000 to write half of your music, or you're not going to get John Sonnenberg to work on an hour of fresh new music that he hasn't done before for $40,000. You can, if somebody's got a good back catalog of songs they already wrote for another purpose that they don't mind licensing to you to reuse, you can license that for, low thousands maybe. And I'm not going to talk about what deals I made specifically with different people, but I'm just saying it's possible. So I got to think about that a little bit. There is also a lot of music out there from royalty-free sources that sounds really good, and you don't even have to have a relationship with the musician. You can actually just license it right away. And I have some of it there. I'll play some right now, just to give you an idea. Let me take the Explorer off of my main screen, because it's somewhat dangerous from a... By the way, if there's anybody that hears this and sees me as a hacking target, I'll just say, you can own me really easily. With the state of things, with all the crappy security and routers, and don't feel it would be a great achievement to hack into my system. I'm at your mercy. Please don't hack me. But I'll try to make it not unbelievably easy, and I'll keep my File Explorer off in a different location to avoid revealing things. Okay, so I go to my license sound effects, my music. Every piece of music or sound effects I've ever used in something I've publicly distributed has been scrupulously licensed. I never went and just grabbed some shit and said, oh, this sounds cool, I'm going to throw it in. Never. That is a legal practicality. It is a moral stand. So this is actually a good example of the type of stuff you get when you grab like a giant archive of royalty-free music and you pay like, you know, a few $100s. Okay. Now, does this sound that good? So it sounds like plausible game music, but it doesn't sound particularly inspired. You're not going to remember it. I mean, if you do remember it, it's going to be like with yeah, I'm kind of tired of this music. I don't know. Maybe somebody else would dig on it. But basically, there's musicians, and they sit down, and without like pouring their heart and soul into their music, they churn out a ton of competent music. Occasionally, little flourishes get in there, and it sounds beautiful, and you realize that a little bit of that great creative thing that was in them got put into this track that got licensed out to the world for a small amount of money. And when that happens, you should feel pretty lucky and grateful to that musician that sat down and churned out a whole bunch of factory style stuff and managed to get something beautiful released. But by and large, there's just like a lot of competent sounding music that just isn't that good. So when I go in to like these royalty free sources and license some stuff, it's possible just to get a lot of mediocre, okay sounding music. I kind of don't want to do that. The best situation might be to find another musician like John. And I kind of don't want to go back to John because John's been like identified with the Caravel sound, and I don't know. I kind of want to depart from that a little bit. I love John's work, but I feel like I want to get away from that. So I could find like another musician who has a back catalog that he or she has created for other purposes that would sound good, and make a deal with that person to license the back catalog, and perhaps commission some modifications to change that music to become game ready assets that are fitting like the required lengths and things like that. That might be a pretty reasonable way to go about this. Okay, I spent a lot of time talking about that. Let me go over this again, see what else I might want to flesh out here. Playtesting. Kind of curious how people feel about early access as a means of playtesting. Is that kind of a crummy way to do things? Like early access would be you release the game when it's at that 75% done mark. It's basically beta stage, and you release it with a price tag, but it should usually be like kind of a discounted deal, cheaper than the price of the game after it's been released. So maybe this thing goes out in 75% mode and costing about 75% as much as it would cost after it was properly released. And it's also sort of like an opportunity to work closely with fans of the game who like that early development environment. And I haven't thought that through very far. That's one model. Okay, so I bought Crosscode in early access and then way later finally paid attention to it when it was declared main feature complete. Anyone making things in early access should be aware of people with habits like that. Okay, I'm trying to... Okay, so you, I think you're saying, Zindaris, that it might be... I'm not sure. What are you saying would be like the problem for me to be aware of, as far as this pattern of... Okay. So you can get a whole bunch of early access people, perhaps. Well, I mean, I should be so lucky, right? But only a minority of them maybe would actually be interested in contributing in a way that's like proper playtesting. So maybe the drawed model of playtesting is better. And when I say it out loud, it feels like that's probably the way to do it. Is we get some folks that are like properly interested in the game, and I might be lucky, and it's like people that are on this chat here that I'm talking to, and we say, here, have a free copy of this game. It's probably going to crash. There's probably going to be bugs. Your commitment is not to spend $15 to get an early access copy of it. Your commitment is to just work with me. Just give me bug reports, which might need to follow kind of a more elaborate format than just it crashed on me when I pressed this button. And then when I go back and I look at the play testing that was done with Drod following this model, we had wonderful help from people, and it was a real partnership. And I think the trade was, yeah, you get this game early. You also get to, be involved with its development, and that's fun. And we get some high quality play testing from people who actually care about the game. When I say it out loud, I'm pretty sure that's the right model for this. So I'm just going to put for now, Drod style play testing, less than 10 people. It's not our goal to get a whole horde of people beaten on this thing. It's our goal to get kind of a higher quality of tester that we've got a relationship with, that's in it with us, that's on the team. But not like asking people to spend X number of hours per week working on it. I mean, if you got to that point where people need to make that commitment, then it'd be appropriate to be paying, basically. So I think that's kind of that's probably the most befitting style playtesting for this scale project. Yes. Complete newbie testing of the intro levels. Now, I did one thing with JTRH that worked quite well for this, and was good for promo purposes as well. I got a table at a gaming convention, a small one. Not like it's not out of the question. I could do one like PAX, something like that. But actually, the same weekend that PAX was happening, I went to a board game, or kind of a more traditional pen and paper type of a convention, and I set up a table, and I had as much feedback as I could have wanted on that complete newbie testing. That worked amazingly well. I think that's probably the way to go. So probably convention table. Yeah, and actually smaller conventions are better for this because, well, one, they're cheaper, of course, but two, there's not that whole raucous crowd thing. Um, it's really hard to get somebody's attention span when there's like this roar of people around you and you're just kind of like fighting for a space to breathe in. So I think I would go for, like a smaller type of convention for that kind of thing. So playtesting, Mac plus PC. I don't know. I see now I'm starting to write kind of like requirements of playtesting. Let me put that up in there. Mac plus PC. I should say Mac plus Windows. PC now means just really Mac and Windows. So those will be my two starting targets. Okay, so I think that covers playtesting. And this is going to be for bugs. It's going to be for level design problems, unintentional solutions. Okay, game elements I feel good about. Creatures I feel good about. General game engine probably needs more fleshing out here, to be honest. Although I'm not maybe going to do that all right now. No, I don't know. I might be close. There might be like 2 or 3 more things that need to be done here. Meta functionality. Setting screen. Grudge mode. No, grudge mode was general game engine, not meta. Oh, there's going to be some more assets here. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. This was a big one. Let's say level cosmetics. And this I haven't spec'd out yet, but it's going to be things like, I want some scenery. Some. Kind of like when you look over a cliff, I don't just want it to be a flat expanse. I mean, not even expanse. I don't want it to be just like a flat color. I want it to be looking down into a swirling void, or so I'll say like skybox, or what would you call it? Background models. Background far away models. Thankfully, I don't have to do like a whole bunch of level of detail things. Like when I was talking about like having that seamless level. If I had the seamless level, I would have had to make for each 3D modeled asset like a version of it that would be low level of detail when it's far away and high when you get close. It's one corner I get to cut by not making it seamless. Okay, and then let's see. Let's see other things. Just like I shouldn't detail these out, but as an example, pipes, stained glass windows. Okay, I just kind of wanted to make like these sort of churchy stained glass windows. Okay. So for now, let's say level detail number 1, because I haven't spec'd them out yet, but I want to just have like some kind of gist of how much of this stuff am I going to do. 3, and I think there'll be a fair amount, so I think I'll think of like maybe like 10. Each one probably being roughly equal in terms of effort. The reason I do this is, again, I'm trying to figure out, can I get this all done in about a year? Or can I fool myself into thinking it'll be a year and get it done in a year and a half? That's what I'm aiming for. So at some point, not with everyone here on the call, I'll do some thinking about like what were actual times to put against these things. What are my estimates of how long each of these things is going to take? And then I want to detail I'll just say details on game elements, meaning let's see, foundational elements, for lack of a better word. Nobody came up with a better word than foundational yet, at least in my opinion. But I would like a better name for it if I can think of one, or somebody can. So, like, some of these are pretty close to how I like them. I don't want to make them too detailed because it's a fairly low poly game, or I mean, like, I should say, if you look, come on, all I do is Alt tab to Unity and it decides that's a major undertaking. If you ever get a Mac and you have an option to get either a large solid state drive or to get a small one, just spring for the extra money and get that large solid state drive. Don't go with like an external one. So okay, so yeah, that was basically my external drive waking up as I went over to Unity. So like, take for example these axles. I could add more detail to them. There'd be no point though. The level of detail here is about right, because it'll just be wasted. You won't really be able to see it. This exit here, super low poly. You won't be able to see if I add like some extra grooves and stuff. I already made like this thing where there's like a shingled roof as a sort of an attempt at making some level cosmetics, and there wasn't any reason for me to add the modeling for the extra shingles. It was completely lost when you were at like a typical level of detail. This egg here, I may do a few extra things to add a little bit more detail to it, but again, not much reason to adding more. Some of the details that might get added might be more textural and UV mapping. Would love to find a good UV model expert that doesn't mind taking some models that weren't created by them and just punching them up, just making the textures look a little bit nicer and detailed. So I'm pretty good with a lot of these elements. I just might add a little bit to it. And we talked about in last week's session these axles, how it's really friggin' hard to tell to which axle a spoke is connected. So we'd make a little revision where this connection point was very clear, something like that. There's things like, you can see where these rails, where they connect. It'd be nice to have a little corner piece that connects them up nicely. The spikes, I thought about, adding like some variations to them, but that's like a thing that I think I could do without. Doesn't feel like it would help too much. The ice here, I'd like it to look a little more organic, like an actual ice. A nice thing about the aesthetic of this game, like Minecraft, it relies upon you seeing clearly the spacing between things. So it's not appropriate for me to make a very organic looking ice shape here that would obscure the squares that it occupies. So I could make like it really curve here in a nice way that look like proper ice. I'll probably do a compromise between like organic looking ice and blocky looking ice, because the blockiness is an asset for us, or I shouldn't say asset, I should say it's a benefit. Yeah, and then like things like these arches, that's the type of cosmetic thing that I would like to add more of. So that's the type of stuff I've got for the cosmetics there. I'm feeling pretty good about this plan. I'm feeling like it actually represents mostly what I need to do. I think it's probably 90% hitting what I have to go and do. So let me put that away, and I'll talk a little bit about what we've got going on for next week. I've written a song. That I would like some help as an experiment recording voices that would be like a choir, or we've done this once before. We've done this kind of experiment before. If you ever played Perfection, there's a song in it that is sort of crowdsourced. Although it's such a small crowd, I would call it group sourced. Where we record individual parts and we put them together to make it sound like everyone was singing the same song. So I'd like to try that. The song I've written is pretty silly. So we asked on the forum, and everybody kind of made attachments of their recordings and they put it in. This one, I will teach you live how to sing this song, okay? And I'm going to have background music for it. There'll be like these sort of like church-like chords playing. And we're going to kind of like walk through it a few times and rehearse it. Now, I won't be able to hear you. You'll hear me singing. And I'll be saying, okay, sing this part along with me. We're going to practice. We'll go through, we'll do the line. You get to practice a little bit. You get to try to coordinate your singing along with mine. It doesn't matter if you're not a good singer. Because if you're really terrible, I just won't use your recording. But no, if you would like to stress yourself a little bit and try something outside of what you normally do with singing, you can definitely do that. If you are a good singer, all the better. But I'm drawing on my experience a little bit with attending church and singing music inside of a church. And there's a thing called a hymn that people sing in churches, and hymns are designed by their nature so that a large number of people can sing them well and not sound bad and kind of feel like they're part of something greater. By the way, I'm not going off into any of these podcasts, streams. You'll never hear me advocating anything religious or against religion, anything like that. I'm not a religious person. I have a religious background. So hymns are by their nature designed such that people that aren't necessarily good at singing can sing along pretty well. And the song I've written, it's called the All Blocks Hymn. I'll explain the story behind it when we get to it. It's of that same type of style, and it's fun. It's fun to sing it. I've already been playing around with it. So I'll lead the hymn. In this case, there will be lyrics for you to follow along. You will need to have a recording going on your side. You'll need to have a microphone set up that will record your. You don't have to. You can still go along with this stream as you go and just sing on your own side. But in order for your part to be potentially contribute to the song that goes in the game, you would need to have a microphone. So you would record locally during the session. Once we said, okay, we're all going to record this thing on this try. And after we were done recording, you would post your recording. I think on the Caraville forum would probably make the most sense. And then I would take all those pieces of audio and I would edit them, I would combine them as I've done a number of times before, and we would produce a song together. And that song might sound really terrible, and I might say, sorry folks, this just didn't work. I'm aiming for a higher level of quality, and this was just a fun experiment. Or we might say, no, this is it. We're going to put this in the game. Your voice would be in the game, and it'd be pretty cool. Either way, I think it's pretty cool. Second way, extra cool. So that is going to happen next Sunday, 3 p.m., Godkiller Sundays. Godkiller Gamedev Sundays, I guess is what I'll call this thing. And I hope people will come back and join for that. There will be, as far as I can tell into the future, every Sunday, 3 p.m., I'm going to do this thing. Even if nobody comes, I'm going to do it. And So I hope that people will keep coming back and join me for these things. So I think I'm going to hang it up pretty quick here. And I do appreciate everyone joining in. Zendaris, Del Polo, really appreciate the chat comments. It's fun to interact with you there. Also, if anyone doesn't know, Zendaris has a channel for playthroughs of Drod and other games. I've been tuning into some of them. They are pretty cool. He does a nice job on it. If Zendaris was streaming right now, instead of being on my channel, I'd say, let's go raid Zendaris, and I would do the little raid thing and point over to his thing. But yeah, definitely follow him and check out some of his stuff too. All right, end of the stream is coming up. Is coming up pretty shortly, and goodbye. Great to have you. See you later.